out a dirty old window. Down below, the cars in the city go rushing by. I sit here alone and I wonder why. Friday night and everyone's moving. I can feel the heat, but it's soothing heading down. I search for the beat in this steady town. Downtown, the young ones are going. Downtown, the young ones are growing. We're the kids in America. Whoa. We're the kids in America. Whoa. Everybody live for the music around.
In America. Welcome to Growing Up in America from Children at Risk here on KPFT. With me today, Claire Dutray. How you doing, Claire?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Dr. Bob here as well. And we have another 60-minute program for all of you fanatics of policy. We're going to talk. We have a pretty good show, Claire. I'm
We
pretty
have
excited
a pretty
about it.
great show.
Pretty great indeed. We are beginning a series of interviews with all of the mayoral candidates running for mayor in the city of Houston. And we're real excited about that. Derrick Broze is the candidate we're going to have on the air today in just a couple of minutes. We're excited about that. But we're hoping that over the next month or so, we really get each of the candidates in here and we get to hear what's going on. All right, up first in our series on the mayoral candidates in Houston, Derrick Broze is with us. Derrick is a journalist, author, documentary filmmaker, entrepreneur, public speaker, and most importantly, an activist. Mr. Broze, thanks for being on the program today.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Broze, tell us a little bit about your journey to deciding that you want to run for mayor, because it's not an easy decision, right? And you're up against a lot of big hitters this time. So what are your thoughts around that in your journey?
Well, so I've been, as you mentioned, I've been an activist and a journalist here in Houston for the last 14 years, and I spent a lot of time at City Hall. I've been going to city council meetings since 2010, 2011, around homelessness issues, water quality, environmental, police violence, you name it. I've been there trying to raise awareness, both as an individual, as a citizen, and as somebody who is also playing the role of a journalist. And in that time, I've had some great successes, met a lot of wonderful people, but I also came to realize that there are some major roadblocks to real lasting change in the city of Houston.
Yeah.
And the majority of them start with the mayor's office. And so after kind of going down that rabbit hole of learning more about the city and how the mayoral's office works and the power that the mayor has and working with various city council members, it led me to some of the conclusions which I'm now bringing as part of my platform for the mayor's office.
And Derrick, what is your hook? I mean, what is the thing that sort of makes you unique amongst all the other candidates that you think this is the thing, if this catches on, there's really a chance that I'll win?
I'm glad you asked that. What I believe makes me different from the other candidates is that, for one, I'm not a politician and really have no aspirations to be a politician. You know, I'm not looking to be a career politician, start with mayor and then go on from there. So I'm not part of the entrenched political class. And I'll be frank, the current two frontrunners, or at least those who are being crowned the frontrunners by the local media, Sheila Jackson Lee and John Whitmire, are deeply tied to the corporate Democratic Party and to billionaire foundations and corporate money. And for myself, with my time in the community, I have an activist grassroots movement behind me. We're bringing together a coalition of people from across the political spectrum. Last night, I spoke to a group of Republicans here in Houston. The night before, I spoke to the West Houston Democrats. A couple of days before that, I was at the Pride Forum. I'll be speaking to the Libertarians next weekend. We're building a coalition of people who are across the political spectrum, who are looking for common sense solutions and who are sick of career politicians and City Hall and looking for some real change.
Claire?
Yeah. If you were elected, what are your top 3 priorities that you think the city should shift their focus on?
Okay, so first of all, again, this is born out of my experience as an activist and a journalist. The first main thing that I'm calling for, which is resonating across the board, is to amend the city charter to take away the power of the mayor. For those who are not aware, Houston's mayoral position, not Sylvester Turner, but the position itself, is the strongest in the United States. Not only in terms of we have a strong mayor form of government, that's not unusual. Other cities have that as well. But Houston, particularly in the way it's set up, is very much geared to what I would consider to be somewhat of a local dictatorship. I mean, and where the mayor has ultimate power over setting the budget and determining how much money the city council members get, as well as setting the weekly agenda. And for anybody who's put in time going down to city council to speak about issues you care about, you might have experienced waiting for hours on end, because the way the city council agenda works, if you're not on the official agenda, but you want to call to speak about flooding in your neighborhood or something like that, and you call in, you get your 2 or 3 minutes, and you go downtown, and you take off work, and you write your little speech, and you say your thing. If you're not on the official agenda, you will wait 2 to 3 to 4 hours. You'll be placed at the end of the meeting. By that point, the mayor's gone, half the council's gone. The ones who are there are not even paying attention. And it's a very disheartening, dissatisfying experience. And I've seen, with working on those issues I mentioned, working with council members, I've had council members tell me, I'm sorry, Derrick, but my hands are tied. We can't do anything. If the mayor says no, we can't get this through. We can't get this even on the agenda to discuss it, to potentially introduce a resolution, to have a vote, or to make that real change that I think is so important. And for me, this is core. Changing this is core to getting real change, regardless of whatever other people's core issues are. If we don't change this, it doesn't matter how great of council members we elect. This will not change. We will not be able to push through things that I think need to get done. So I'm running on that largely. And I want to mention that you'll hear other candidates mentioning this now, because they're starting to realize that this is something people want from across the political spectrum. But their solution is elect me, and I promise I'll use that power in the best way possible. Whereas I'm the only candidate that's running with the intention to reduce my own power and give that back to the city council, to amend the city charter so that if 1/5 of the city council, about 3 members, says that their constituents are calling them for a particular topic, that it would automatically be placed on the agenda. The mayor couldn't prevent that. And then we could have further discussion. People could come into city council, their voices would be heard. And ideally, if people are engaged, that would lead to real change. So that's really the core. And there's other things, I'm into the environment, food inequality, that I'm happy to talk about. But that is really the core plank that we're running on.
Yeah, speaking of environment and just overall quality of life, in your platform you have a couple of things. One on community gardens and expanding the access to organic food in Houston's 5th Ward, if you can speak on that. And then also your plan for Houston's animals.
Yes, thank you for that. So I've been involved in Houston's community garden, urban farm scene, I guess you could say, since 2011, 2012. I used to work at a no longer existing community farm. Unfortunately, it's been replaced by some of the gentrification going on in that area, but it was called the Last Organic Outpost, and it was a 2-acre farm in the 5th Ward of Houston, where there's, it's considered a food desert. There's no grocery stores nearby. There's dollar stores and gas stations and things of that sort. And there were so many amazing people involved in that. We brought music, we brought activism, we brought, most importantly, good, clean, organic food to a neighborhood that never had it. We started working with the local neighbors, and you would see neighbors just walking into the garden and picking the greens that they wanted and taking them home. And it was such an empowering experience, such a beautiful experience. And so I spent a lot of my time as an activist organizing things, like we did a garden crawl a few years ago, encouraging people to bike to the different gardens around the inner loop. And I have a lot of experience in this. I've also got certified as a permaculture teacher in 2020. And this is really core to what I want to bring to the table. In my view, there are a lot of common sense solutions, especially as it pertains to the environment, that are being completely ignored in the city of Houston. And I don't, want to speculate as to why they're being ignored. Maybe it's just a lack of information. But ideas like permaculture, which are really born out of indigenous farming methods from around the world, can do so much for our city. And so I want to bring those to the table. I have on contact right now, ready to call and ready to bring them to Houston, permaculture experts from around the world who would love to reimagine the city and envision how we could bring in more native plants and industrial hemp, which is now legal in Texas, to help with flooding and to help with erosion. And as far as the community gardens idea I have, we've already identified a number of vacant lots that are owned by the city of Houston around different neighborhoods. And we want to, if I was to come in as mayor, to work with the permitting department to make it as cheap as possible. I'm imagining permits for neighborhoods that are interested in this program for as little as $1, giving them access to these lots that are either just sitting there and they're turning into dumping grounds, or they're used for crime, and redirecting some resources from some other wasteful areas that I see, and creating something like a non-GMO seed distribution program, encouraging more community gardens and urban farms, because I think it's important for us to have more localized food production and food distribution. As we've seen the last couple of years, especially during COVID, there was more people in Texas than there have been in decades having to go to food pantries and to things like that. So we can see the value and the importance of having local food production.
Mr. Broze, I want to direct your questions to some around children in Houston. One of the things that we see in Houston is that half of all the children in our city are children of immigrants or immigrants themselves. What might you do differently in terms of creating a climate that sort of counters what we're seeing from the state around immigration and specifically around immigrant kids?
That's a great question. It's unfortunate some of the rhetoric that is used in our great state here when it comes to immigrants and how that might impact the youth is something that we need to talk about. I am a part of and connected with various communities in Houston that are immigrant communities, some who are undocumented and some who are documented. And I do think this is a part of the conversation that is completely ignored, especially not even in terms of just local politics, but just the community conversation. And a lot of lip service is paid to this idea with other politicians in terms of putting city documents in different languages. I think we can do better than that. And my kind of vision is that we have more outreach, more of a direct line to City Hall for individuals like that. Because, again, across the board, I see that Houstonians of all backgrounds, all persuasions, all stripes, their voices are being ignored. If you're not in that sort of elite circle at City Hall and connected to those in power, then your concerns are probably not going to be heard very often unless there's some political, convenient reason to do so. So I would like to open up the lines of communication to individual immigrant families and their kids specifically to hear what are the issues that are facing them. I mean, I do think just from my own experience, I can say I know that part of the challenge of coming in as an immigrant family, and especially if you're coming in as a child who doesn't speak English very well or at all, is the integration process. And I know there's some great efforts being made in different Houston schools and teachers do their best, but I've heard time and time again from friends as well as, my own partner who is first generation born in the U.S. and had to learn English along with Spanish, that a lot of times the struggles you have are just communicating your needs and communicating, how to get things done, how to get integrated. And there's, I think, a lot more work that could be done in that area to creating programs and just making the effort to make those who are coming in who might not have the language skills or just the know-how to make that process as simple as possible. I think that could go a long way to then getting to know what are the issues that are really affecting your community and how can we work with you.
I want to ask you another question, and then I want to go to our fun 5 questions, which we want to ask of all the mayoral candidates. Derrick, when we talk about schools in the state of Texas, K through 12 schools, and to a certain extent early education, we hear in Houston from a lot of mayoral candidates, and having interviewed mayoral candidates over the years, people like to say, well, they're ISDs, so they're separate from what we do. But what I notice is that in Houston, we say that a lot, but in Dallas, in San Antonio, in Austin, there's a vibrant debate, even during mayoral races, around our schools and what should be done with our schools. When you think about the 20-odd school districts that fall inside the Houston city limits, and you think about public education in our city, what are the things that as a mayor you would want to see happen and that you would sort of use that bully pulpit to see happen?
Well, you're correct that, legally, technically, the mayor is not in control of the schools, but also, as you said there, you have the bully pulpit, you have the soapbox, and you can definitely be an advocate for the youth and for those in Houston's different school districts. And I'll also add that I just, probably like the listeners here, I do not support the taking over of HISD by Texas. I definitely think that's a step in the wrong direction. Obviously, there's some things that need to be done. There are some needs that are not being met. But again, I don't see much effort being made to actually listen to the people and what their concerns are. I have nieces and nephews in Houston area schools, and I very much care about the direction those schools are going. And what I've been trying to do as a candidate and as a person, and the reason I emphasize that is because I'm in this race. I'm here. I'm serious. I'm going to be on the ballot and running to win this mayoral race. but I'm also just an activist. I'm a human being. And so outside of the political race, I care about these issues, and I want to work with people who do. And the great thing about the race, though, is I get to meet other people who are working in the education department, people who are on school boards, people who have previously worked in education or teachers, and get to learn from them and speak to them, because I can't speak as a professional teacher. I can't speak as a principal or somebody who's spending a lot of time with these students, but I can speak as a former student of Houston area schools and as somebody who struggled in those schools and who probably wouldn't have made it through without some really helpful, really supportive teachers that just, helped me through some tough times so I could graduate high school and go on with my life and do the things I'm doing now.
Where did you go to high school, Derrick?
I went to high school out in Katy. I went to Houston school up until about 11 years old in HISD, and then my family moved me to Katy, and I got back to the city as fast as I could. But if it wasn't for some of those teachers, I wouldn't have been able to make it through. And the reason I bring that up is because I feel like, yes, the mayor can't go in there and change anything in HISD, but the mayor could go in there and could become a friend to various school districts and various schools and teachers, and make those relationships clear. Make it clear that the city has an open door. If you want to come speak to my office and you have concerns about your students, even though it's not technically under my purview, come speak to me. Let's talk about it. And then let's see how we can advocate for those issues that you think need to be heard and that are currently not being heard.
Very good. Derrick Broze is one of the candidates for mayor here in the city of Houston. And thank you, Derrick, very, very much for being our initial candidate as we do this series on all of the mayoral candidates running for mayor here in Houston. Thank you, Derrick, very much.
Thank you for making the effort to talk to the candidates. I'll talk to y'all soon.
All right, take care.